So imagine aiming like a slow-motion blowtorch at the side of your house.
Oh, wow.
Right, and while you're doing that, you're simultaneously blasting it with corrosive salt from a high-powered fan.
Yeah, that sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It really does. But, I mean, that is essentially what the weather on the Florida Gulf Coast is doing to buildings every single day.
Every single day. Exactly.
And since you've been looking into coastal property management, we actually ran your notes through this deep dive to figure out exactly what you're up against here.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It is. So today's mission is unpacking this really fascinating stack of sources from a professional painting company based down in Dunedin, Florida.
A beautiful area, by the way.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah.
But we're using their field data to explore these surprising and honestly kind of brutal complexities of property maintenance in these coastal climates.
It really serves as the perfect case study, honestly, because, while paint seems strictly aesthetic to the casual observer.
Right, like you just pick a nice summer sunset color, roll it on, and move on.
Exactly. But it is actually a property's primary, and sometimes its only, defensive barrier against environmental degradation.
The only defense. Wow.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how the local environment turns what most of us think of as just a simple cosmetic choice into this high-stakes structural decision.
I mean, we've all been tempted by the idea of a weekend DIY project.
Oh, for sure.
You watch a couple of highly edited online videos, you head to the big box hardware store.
Grab a roller and some cape.
Exactly. But today, we're going to completely dismantle the marketing myth of the quick Saturday paint job.
It is definitely a myth.
We are going to look at the actual material science, the hardcore economics, and the logistics of what it really takes to protect a building from the forces of nature.
Because to understand why so many DIY painting projects turn into massively expensive disasters, we first have to understand the invisible environmental war being waged against our homes.
Right, and the data in your stack paints a pretty intense picture of Dunedin specifically.
It does. So Dunedin sits directly on Florida's Gulf Coast, with the open water of St. Joseph Sound and Honeymoon Island right on its doorstep.
Beautiful spots, but man, that wind.
Yeah, that specific geography creates a uniquely hostile environment for exterior surfaces. I mean, you have the ambient humidity, which sits between 80 and 95% for a large part of the year.
95%, that's practically swimming.
Pretty much. And then you combine that moisture with ambient temperatures that are routinely over 90 degrees.
Which sounds like a fantastic environment for a beach vacation, honestly, but an absolute nightmare for building materials.
Oh, absolutely. Because you aren't just dealing with ambient heat and moisture. You are dealing with intense, direct UV radiation.
Right, the blowtorch.
Exactly. The sources use that slow-motion blowtorch analogy for a very good reason. Prolonged UV exposure aggressively attacks the chemical binders in the paint.
Wait, so it literally breaks down the chemicals?
Yes. Think of paint binders like the structural glue holding a sandcastle together. UV radiation acts like microscopic scissors, constantly snipping those polymer chains.
Snipping the chains, okay.
And once that glue is degraded, the pigment basically has nothing to hold it to the wall. It just turns into a loose powder.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, that is the mechanical process behind what the industry calls chalking. You wipe your hand across an older house, and it comes away covered in this dusty residue.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it's not just the UV radiation snipping the polymer chains, right?
Yeah.
The notes you shared highlight salt as the silent killer here.
It really is.
And I want to make sure we understand the mechanics of that, because salt doesn't just, like, bounce off the wall.
No, not at all. Salt crystals are highly hygroscopic.
Hygro what now?
Hygroscopic. That means they actively attract and hold on to water molecules from the surrounding environment.
Okay, got it.
Even if a home is, say, a mile inland from the Dunedin waterfront, the coastal wind constantly carries these microscopic salt particles.
So nobody is safe.
Right. And when those particles deposit onto the exterior walls, they don't just sit there dry. They pull moisture out of that 95% humidity air.
Oh, wow. So they create their own little puddles?
Basically, yeah. They create localized microscopic pockets of highly corrosive salt water directly on the paint surface.
That sounds terrible for the paint.
It's the worst. That concentrated brine slowly eats through the acrylic layer. It accelerates the chalking process and leads directly to adhesion failure.
Adhesion failure, meaning it just falls off.
The paint film literally loses its grip on the substrate and just peels away, yeah.
Which brings us to what the Dunedin crew calls the DIY delusion.
I love that term.
It's so accurate. It's this pervasive marketing lie that painting your house is just this transformative, easy afternoon.
Right.
Like the commercial shows a smiling homeowner with a roller in one hand, the sun is shining, and boom, brand new house.
And that image moves a massive volume of inexpensive paint at retail hardware stores, let me tell you.
Oh, I can see the appeal. I mean, structurally speaking, applying paint seems incredibly straightforward.
Sure, it looks easy.
Right. Anyone with a functioning thumb and a wrist can dip a brush into a bucket and move it back and forth across a wall.
Exactly.
But the data shows a massive failure rate for amateur jobs. How is the professional approach mechanically different from the DIY approach?
Well, the physical act of moving a brush is simple, but there is a massive difference between simply applying liquid pigment to a wall and engineering an actual protective barrier for a substrate.
Engineering a barrier. I like that phrasing.
Because if a homeowner uses retail-grade paint, or, if they hire an unlicensed budget contractor
Yeah.
who thins their products and cuts corners.
Saves a few bucks, yeah.
Exactly. That paint job in a coastal climate like Dunedin's will suffer catastrophic failure in 1 to 2 years.
1 to 2 years, that's nothing.
It's nothing. The UV and the salt will compromise it, and it will peel, chalk, and fade into a ghost of itself.
But a professional job using premium coastal-grade acrylic latex and your stack actually mentions specific high-build formulations designed for high humidity, high UV environments like Sherwin-Williams Emerald or Benjamin Moore or Exterior.
Yeah, those are the heavy hitters.
Right, so that application lasts 5 to 8 years. That's a huge difference.
It is, and the chemistry in those premium lines utilizes advanced 100% acrylic binders that resist UV degradation far longer than the vinyl acrylic blends found in cheaper paints.
Ah, so the cheap stuff is a blend.
Right. The premium ones are chemically engineered to cross-link tighter upon curing, which physically blocks that hygroscopic salt moisture from penetrating the film.
Okay, so let's talk about the economics, because this is where the DIY dream usually begins.
It's all about the money.
It always is. And the financial breakdown in your notes provides some serious perspective here.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie.
So for a small bungalow in a market like Dunedin, say under 1,200 square feet, a full exterior professional repaint runs between $1,500 and $2,500.
Right.
A medium home up to 2,000 square feet is roughly $2,500 to $4,000.
Yep.
And a large home over 3,000 square feet is looking at $6,000 to $10,000. Sometimes more depending on architectural complexities like, multiple stories or heavy trim work.
And seeing a quote for $8,000 to paint a house is a significant psychological hurdle.
Oh, massive. I'd be sweating.
It is entirely understandable why a homeowner would look at that number, look at a $500 cart of supplies at the hardware store, and decide to spend their Saturday on a ladder.
But when you break down the math, though, a cheap DIY job isn't a savings. It's an uninsured, high-interest loan on your house's structural integrity.
That is exactly what it is.
Because the true cost of a bad DIY job isn't just the wasted $500 in retail paint.
No.
When that inferior product fails in 2 years, you now have to pay for a complete professional redo anyway. You've just doubled your long-term cost.
And the cascading failure goes way beyond just the paint.
Wait, really? What else happens?
When the paint film fails, the substrate, the actual structural material of the house, is fully exposed to the elements.
Oh, no.
Yeah. In Florida, that means moisture penetrates your wood siding, your fascia boards, or your soffits.
So it's rotting from the inside.
Exactly. Now, you aren't just paying for painters to fix a cosmetic issue. You are hiring carpenters to rip out and replace rotting wood, and potentially dealing with mold remediation.
Which costs a fortune.
A literal fortune. And
Right.
we really must factor in the liability, too.
Oh, right, the unlicensed contractors?
Right. Hiring an unlicensed, uninsured worker to save a few $1,000s means if they fall off a ladder on your property, you are personally, legally liable for their medical bills and lost wages.
Wow. So it is a massive financial risk disguised as weekend savings.
100%.
Okay, so since we've established that the coastal climate will ruthlessly expose a cheap amateur paint job, the next logical question is, how do the professionals actually make those premium acrylics survive for 8 years?
That is the big question.
Because they're working in the exact same weather. But the answer in your stack is fascinating. It has almost nothing to do with the paint itself.
This represents one of the most misunderstood aspects of the whole trade. The professional industry operates on a philosophy we can call the 70% rule.
The quote they use for this is perfect. It says, "The paint is just the ribbon on the gift. The gig itself is the substrate."
It's a great way to think about it. If the surface you are painting the substrate is compromised, dirty, or structurally unsound, the quality of the ribbon just doesn't matter.
Right, you're putting a nice ribbon on a box of garbage.
Exactly. The strongest premium acrylic will fail if it's applied to a failing surface. Real professional preparation is not just opening a can and stirring it with a wooden stick.
Which is what I usually do.
Most people do. But the sources indicate that a professional crew will spend at least 3 days sweating, scraping, filling, sanding, pressure washing, and chemically treating a house before a single drop of paint is ever applied.
3 days of just prep. That's wild. Skipping prep is like trying to put an expensive waterproof medical bandage over a wound that is covered in sand.
That is exactly it.
It doesn't matter how advanced the adhesive on the bandage is. The sand guarantees it won't stick to the skin.
Right.
But by Sunday afternoon, the weekend warrior is tired, the football game is starting, and they just start rolling paint over whatever dirt, chalking, and flaking mess is already on the wall.
And that's when the clock starts ticking on a failure.
So let's look at the actual physics of why skipping that prep is so fatal, especially in a humid environment.
It comes down to microscopic vulnerabilities and thermodynamics.
Okay, thermodynamics, let's get nerdy.
Imagine a tiny hairline crack in the exterior stucco of a home. If that microcrack isn't meticulously cleaned out, patched with an elastomeric compound, and sealed during the prep phase, the high humidity of the Gulf Coast drives moisture right into that gap.
The moisture always finds a way in.
It always does.
Yeah.
Now the sun comes up, the temperature spikes to 95 degrees. That trapped moisture inside the wall heats up.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, as water heats up, it turns to vapor and expands. That expansion creates outward pressure against the back of the paint film.
So it's pushing from the inside out.
It literally pushes the paint off the wall from the inside out. That mechanism is exactly what causes the severe blistering and peeling you see on a failed paint job.
Wow.
If you don't prep perfectly, you are basically sealing thousands of microscopic, ticking water bombs under your fresh coat of paint.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We've been talking entirely about the exterior, right? Battling the sun, the salt,
Right.
the thermodynamic expansion of moisture.
Right.
But the Dunedin sources highlight a surprising detail about interior painting.
Oh, yeah, the interior loophole.
You'd think the logical loophole for a DIR would be to just focus on the inside of the house where the sun and salt can't reach you. But even inside, the coastal humidity dictates the chemistry of the project.
It does. The timing of interior projects in a climate like Florida's is absolutely critical.
The notes point out that the off-season, the winter months, from January through March, is mathematically the absolute perfect time for interior painting in Florida.
Yes, it is.
Like when the snowbirds are down there and people are walking the Pinellas Trail in the cool breeze, that is when you should be painting your living room. Walk us through the chemistry of why that is.
Well, in the summer, even with central air conditioning running constantly, the ambient humidity inside a Florida home is remarkably high.
Right. The AC can only do so much.
Exactly. When you apply water-based acrylic latex paint to an interior wall, the water in that paint needs to evaporate into the air at a very specific, controlled rate. This evaporation is what allows the microscopic polymer particles in the paint to draw together, fuse, and form a continuous durable film. This process is called coalescence.
Coalescence, got it.
If the indoor air is already heavily saturated with humidity, the water in the paint just has nowhere to go. The evaporation slows down dramatically.
The paint literally can't cure, right? Because the air won't accept the moisture.
Exactly. That delayed curing means the polymer chains don't cross-link tightly. The resulting paint film is softer, less durable, and highly prone to tackiness.
That sticky feeling that never goes away.
Yes. But in the winter, the ambient humidity drops significantly. That drier air readily accepts the evaporating moisture from the paint, allowing the coalescence process to happen perfectly.
So you get a much stronger, scrub-resistant finish.
Right. Bathrooms and kitchens are especially vulnerable to poor curing, which is why professionals always mandate semi-gloss or satin finishes in those spaces.
Ah, because they resist water better.
Yes, those higher sheen finishes have a higher ratio of binders to pigment, creating a tighter, more moisture-resistant surface.
Okay, before we move away from residential applications entirely, I want to touch on a very specific architectural challenge mentioned in your stack.
Okay, sure.
Dunedin is known for these beautiful historic neighborhoods with homes dating from the 1920s to the 1950s.
They are gorgeous homes.
They really are.
Yeah.
And I saw the Dunedin crew recommending elastomeric coatings for those older stucco homes.
Oh.
I know that's essentially like a specialized liquid rubber product.
Pretty much, yeah.
But mechanically, why is a standard premium acrylic not enough for that specific era of substrate?
Well, standard premium acrylic is an excellent product, but it is ultimately a relatively thin film. It has some flexibility, but it has limits.
Right.
A home built in the 1920s has been settling, shifting, and experiencing thermal expansion and contraction for a full century.
That's a lot of movement over 100 years.
Exactly. The original stucco on those homes is inherently brittle and prone to deep structural hairline cracking.
So a thin acrylic film would just snap when the house shifts.
Precisely the issue. An elastomeric coating, however, is a high-build, waterproof membrane. It goes on up to 10 times thicker than standard paint.
10 times thicker. Wow.
Yeah, and more importantly, it possesses incredible elongation properties.
Meaning it stretches.
Right. As that century-old stucco shifts and those microscopic cracks open and close with the temperature changes, the elastomeric coating stretches to bridge the gap without breaking.
That is so cool.
It maintains a continuous waterproof seal over a dynamic, moving substrate. But applying it requires specialized knowledge of film thickness gauges and proper primer bonding, making it a technique completely outside the realm of standard DIY application.
Yeah, I don't think they sell thickness gauges next to the cheap rollers.
Definitely not.
Well, we've just seen how meticulous, highly technical, and physically grueling it is to properly prep, chemically seal, and paint a single historic bungalow.
It's exhausting just talking about it.
Let's scale that up. Let's look at what happens when you multiply that complexity, increase the square footage exponentially, and drop it right into the middle of a bustling commercial district.
Oh, transitioning from residential to commercial painting introduces an entirely new operational matrix.
A whole different ballgame.
The material science is still crucial, obviously, but the logistical execution becomes the primary challenge.
You know, the analogy that came to mind reading through your notes is the difference between cooking a complex, multi-course dinner for your family in your own kitchen
Right.
versus running a massive commercial restaurant kitchen while the restaurant is actually open and actively serving customers.
That captures the friction perfectly. In the commercial space, a painting crew's primary obstacle isn't just navigating the weather, it's navigating business operations.
They have to execute complex chemical applications without disrupting commerce.
Yes.
The sources specifically mention the historic retail storefronts right on Main Street, the specialized medical offices over on Douglas Avenue, and the high-volume retail centers on Alternate 19.
Busy areas.
So if you are painting a medical office, you can't have heavy scaffolding blocking the ADA ramps, and you certainly can't have the heavy fumes of industrial primers giving patients headaches at 2 in the afternoon.
Operating in those environments requires flipping the traditional work schedule entirely. Commercial crews often operate completely outside of normal business hours.
Like middle-of-the-night stuff.
Yeah, they are setting up staging at 4 in the morning, or working late into the evening, or executing massive pushes over a holiday weekend.
That sounds brutal.
It is. They have to manage vastly larger surface areas with incredible efficiency, tearing down their staging before the business opens, all while maintaining the exact same 70% rule prep standards we discussed earlier.
And the products themselves have to change to meet the environment, right?
Definitely.
A retail plaza sees exponentially more foot traffic, physical impacts from delivery carts, and general wear and tear than a private home.
So professionals switch to commercial grade, high solids epoxies and urethanes that cure to an almost armor-like finish.
Armor-like. I like the sound of that.
But those high-performance coatings often have very specific, sometimes volatile application requirements.
Oh, like what?
Well, managing the curing times of a 2-part epoxy floor coating so that it is dry enough for a retail store to open at 9 a.m. is a massive logistical challenge.
You can imagine.
Furthermore, the stakeholder management is fundamentally different.
Right. Because when you paint a residential house, you talk to the homeowner, you agree on a color, you agree on a price, and you get to work.
Simple. But on a commercial job along Alternate 19, the communication network is deeply complex.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
You are coordinating with property management firms who oversee the budget, leasing agents who are trying to show vacant units, individual business owners who are worried about customer foot traffic,
Oh, man.
and often very strict commercial zoning boards or homeowner associations. You have to thread the needle of varying schedules, stringent safety regulations, and aesthetic expectations.
It absolutely proves why a weekend warrior approach is fundamentally impossible in the commercial sector.
Impossible. It requires a massive, coordinated operation that blends project management with chemical engineering.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a stack of field notes from a local painting company, and I think we've thoroughly busted the myth of the easy weekend paint job.
I'd say so.
What we've learned is that painting in a coastal environment like Dunedin is not a simple cosmetic chore. It is an ongoing, high-stakes battle against the laws of thermodynamics and chemistry.
Yes.
Choosing professional services over DIY isn't just about saving your Saturday afternoon. It's about leveraging advanced material science, rigorous preparation protocols, and complex operational logistics to protect what is likely your most massive financial investment from slow-motion destruction.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a universal truth about property ownership and maintenance.
Which is?
The true cost of any structural project is never just the retail price of the material sitting on a hardware store shelf. The true cost is the price of having to do it twice because you didn't respect the environment you were building in. The environment, whether it's the UV radiation, the hygroscopic salt, or the thermal expansion of water, will always win if you don't engineer a system to withstand it.
The environment always wins. Which leaves me with a final, somewhat provocative thought for you to ponder as we wrap up today.
Oh, let's hear it.
We've just spent all this time exploring how relentlessly destructive coastal environments like Florida's Gulf Coast are to the very skin of our buildings. The paint, the stucco, the surface barriers.
Right.
If the outer layer requires this much advanced chemistry, thick elastomeric membranes, and constant microscopic warfare just to survive a few years against the salt, sun, and humidity,
Yeah.
how will the underlying architecture and the structural materials of our coastal cities need to fundamentally evolve over the next century?
That is a great point.
If the skin is struggling this much against the climate, what happens to the skeleton?
This really raises an important question about the long-term viability of traditional building materials in these zones. It really changes how you look at the skyline of a coastal town.
It totally changes the perspective. The next time you walk past a building with peeling paint or chalky siding, don't just see a delayed chore. Look closer.
See the science.
Exactly. Try to see the invisible war zone, the thermal expansion, the microscopic salt crystals actively attacking the polymer binders. It is all happening right there in plain sight if you understand the mechanics of what you're looking at. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and we will catch you next time.